Good afternoon, brothers, and welcome to the final episode of Pod Kappa Tau, the podcast about anything and everything Phi Kappa Tau. Yes, unfortunately, we have reached the conclusion to our summer series, but for those of you who have listened throughout the summer, you'll have come to realize that all in all, this podcast was just to be a fun way to introduce you all to the faces at the executive offices, get you to know a little bit more about what we do, who we are, and to answer the ever-long question of, well, what the heck does Nationals do anyway? So, really hope that we were able to provide that for you in a fun manner this summer. And, hopefully, who knows, maybe next summer we'll be able to do it again. And we'll probably have some fresh faces by then. But until then, for right now, we have a really fun interview with the Director of Philanthropy, Mr. Charlie Ball. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed getting to talk to him and get to know his story a little bit more and how he got more involved with Phi Tau. So, enjoy. Okay, so now I'm joined by Mr. Charlie Ball. Charlie, thank you very much for calling in and coming on to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to do it. I appreciate the chance.
So for you, you are a Phi Tau from our Alpha chapter at Miami. Back in the day when you were in college, why did you end up joining Phi Tau?
Actually, I didn't join until I was a sophomore, and it was really because some friends of mine from freshman year had joined Phi Tau earlier and kind of convinced me to take a look at it, and that's really the big reason. Phi Tau didn't really jump out at me for any other reason than I had some friends who asked me to think about it, and it's a decision I've never regretted.
It's a perfect way to join is just getting through friends. And, after graduation, what led you to stay involved with Phi Tau?
Well, part of it was since I didn't join until I was a sophomore, was not initiated until the very end of my sophomore year. I'd had a pretty short time in Phi Tau as an undergraduate, and so I was still real enthusiastic. I had gotten to know a number of the headquarters staff people and the then executive director, John Meyerhoff, because I was there at school in Oxford and had attended a convention in 1983 and met a number of the staff people. One of the older members, a year ahead of me, Doug Adams, had joined the staff. So it intrigued me. They recruited me to fill the position of Laurel editor when Tim Collins, my predecessor, was leaving to go to work in industry, and I thought that matched up well with my skills. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do in the future, but it gave me a chance to stay in Oxford, stay involved with the fraternity, and work with a really great group of people that many of whom are still my friends today.
That's awesome. And how long were you the editor of the Laurel?
I just did that for a year. I edited, that was mainly my job. I did travel a little bit in the area and visit a few chapters as a consultant. But I was editor for a year. Then I traveled full-time for a year. And then I got into fundraising and alumni work the third year I was on the staff, which has sort of led me into work that I've done the rest of my career.
So after you did your 3 years, was there a time that you rolled off, or have you been on staff pretty much ever since?
Oh, well, I after I was there for a little less than 3 years, I left the staff, and my only connection to the fraternity then was as a volunteer, as a Board of Governors member at a few chapters, domain director, House Corporation officer. I eventually got elected to the National Council, but have only returned to the staff in the last couple of years when I had the chance to come to work on a part-time basis for the foundation.
So speaking of that part-time work that you do for the foundation, you are the Director of Philanthropy. So what exactly does the Director of Philanthropy do?
I think the best best way to describe it is that my position is to help our alumni and friends, family members, anyone who's really interested in Phi Tau, to match them up with opportunities where they can really make a difference financially, whether that is in raising money to support one of our really excellent national leadership programs like the Leadership Academy or the President's Academy, or whether it's to help someone get more engaged with their chapter, giving to a housing campaign, setting up a scholarship fund, any number of things that can benefit individual chapters. But it's about helping potential donors look for ways, both during their lifetimes and then with bequests or planned gifts after they're gone, to leave a permanent legacy for the organization.
And why do you think that the foundation is key to Phi Tau's success as a whole?
Well, it really provides, I think what Ewing Bowles, the foundation's originator, founder, said all along, was that he believed that the primary objective of the foundation was to help provide a financial, stable backbone to support the fraternity's programs. Legally, by IRS guidelines, we're limited in the kinds of things that we can do. We're limited to supporting educational programming and things like that, educational, charitable work, things like that. But it really helps to bolster the financial underpinning of the organization and allow donors to make tax-deductible contributions to support the many of the important programs of the fraternity.
And one of the new things, you talked about helping out the foundation at a national level, but also we started doing, we can help out our chapters on an individual chapter level. So what exactly does the CEG fund do?
The CEG, or Chapter Educational Grant Fund, is really a very flexible tool. And all it really means is that it is a kind of fund that is designated to benefit a specific chapter. Those can be funds that just hold small number of contributions where money passes through to directly help, maybe to provide a scholarship, maybe to support a chapter's educational programming, the costs that chapters have in sending their members to programs like the Leadership Academy, the President's Academy, other of the programs that we do. But it can also be under that same framework. We can set up permanently endowed funds for chapters. Donors can establish a scholarship that's permanent with a gift as little as $25,000 that will make sure that there's a scholarship that is available for eternity, for the rest of time. They can also set up permanent funds that benefit aspects of the educational aspects of housing. There are any number of things that people can do, but the key is that a CEG benefits an individual chapter, and we're happy to work with donors to think through the ways that they might use those tools.
Yeah, definitely sounds like an important tool, like you said, especially for the learning programs. And kind of speaking of specific chapters, with you being an Alpha guy, is it hard to see your chapter that you were once a part of be closed down?
It is, but it's harder to see your chapter having discipline problems or really underperforming. So the thing that makes us feel a little bit better about that is that when Alpha does come back in the relatively near future, we'll come back stronger than ever, and we'll regain the position both on the Miami campus and in the national fraternity that Alpha has enjoyed for really a long, a big portion of its 100-year plus history. So it's sad to see it close temporarily, but we look forward to really great things for that chapter in the future.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think that that'll be a fun project for whichever future recruiter gets that. And with just sticking with the Alpha here, are you still pretty close with the alumni base there, or all the guys still in close contact that you know?
We have a large, in fact, there are several networks of people, but particularly among the people that I went to school with. I mean, we communicate through Facebook. Have a group that's been getting together at various locations, particularly over the last 8 or 10 years. We've really, as people have gotten a little older, their kids have gotten older, they've had a little more flexibility to travel. It's been fun to renew acquaintances with friends that you knew from long ago and find out that you really haven't missed a beat since then. So yeah, it's one of the things that I think is the most fundamental part of fraternity is the friends that you make and keep for a lifetime. And I'm fortunate that those men that I went to school with as an undergraduate have really turned out to be an excellent group of productive citizens who are still fun to be around and are smart and challenge the way I think about politics and life in general. And it's the kind of people I want to be associated with throughout my life, and that's the thing I value most about the fraternity experience.
I couldn't agree more with you, and I'm sure it's a lot easier to keep up with them today, like you said, through Facebook than it probably was, just even 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
That's right. At least through social media, things like that, people that I haven't seen for a long time, I feel like I have some insight into their life, and it's always fun when our brothers from our era go out of their way to meet up with other brothers when they're traveling for business or for pleasure, and you get to see a picture on Facebook posted of 2 or 3 of the brothers renewing an old acquaintance, and that makes it fun.
Oh yeah, I bet. And kind of switching gears now, one of the things that you alluded to was eventually you got elected to the National Council. So to get onto the National Council, is that something that you specifically have to seek out, or are you elected by the existing National Council?
Well, you're elected technically by the convention, the delegates at the convention, undergraduates and alumni or graduate council and resident council combined. But I'd been involved as a domain director and pretty active in national programming, and so a number of people encouraged me to put my name into the hat for the National Council, and I was fortunate to be elected in 1999 to my term on the council.
And then from there, eventually you became national president. What was it like being national president for 2 years?
Well, it's a challenge. You never quite know what's going to come up. I was really fortunate to work with Steve Hartman, who was the CEO at the time, and a great group of members of the council. Bill Masak was my vice president, who was very supportive and a great member of the team, and he and I, from day one, worked together on trying to build a strategic plan, really the first ever for our organization. Hard to believe, in 100 years. I was installed as president at our centennial convention, and we announced then, and actually started the next day, to begin to work on a strategic plan, a written underpinning for the kinds of programs that we wanted to operate in the fraternity and seek support for from the foundation. And I think that was one of the best decisions that we've ever made. We've really that plan, which was finally approved in 2008, has been revised and expanded, but a number of the basic tenets are still in place now, more than 10 years later. And I think it's been a big benefit to the organization that we have a plan, we have a set of objectives that are bigger than the temporary objectives of any one officer of the organization or any member of the staff of the organization. And that's been, I think, a real big benefit to us, and the reason that we've made the progress that we have in these last dozen or so years.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe, like you said, that was the first strategic plan, but definitely great that it's flourishing, like you said. Kudos to you and your vice president for setting such a good plan in motion and helping us really grow and expand as an organization. And you said that you were installed at the Centennial Convention, which was held in Oxford. How special was that for you, especially with it being the Centennial Convention?
That really was a special moment. The Centennial was a terrific event, very well planned and carried out, and to be installed with so many Phi Tau dignitaries in the room and members of my own chapter on that important 100th anniversary of the national organization that was started at Miami. That was a very auspicious beginning to my term.
Well, I've heard nothing but good things about the Centennial, for sure. I know that it seemed like there was a lot of Phi Taus just from all over the country that seemed to come back to Miami for that sole purpose.
Right, and I think there are some people that came to that event, enjoyed it, and have been coming to conventions ever since on a pretty regular basis.
That's awesome. I know just because I was on the USC expansion last fall for Pi chapter or colony now. I know that a couple of their guys, they said that that's when they really got to get involved. Was they said that they would come to the Centennial, and then that's when talks about bringing Pi back would come. So it's always good to see just convention bringing people back into the folds that maybe haven't been a part of Phi Tau for a little while.
Right.
So kind of switching gears again, one of the things that you do now is you run the Phi Tau archives page, which kind of goes through all the cool stories of Phi Tau and whatnot. So when did you learn all of these different stories that you eventually share?
Well, it's really been an accumulation over time. I've always been interested in history, was a history major in college. Was fortunate when I went through orientation the summer before I started at Miami. At that time, Miami handed out to all the incoming freshmen a copy of a terrific little history book of Miami called the Miami Years, that was written by Walter Havighurst, a Phi Delta, but still a terrific writer and historian from who taught at Miami. And so on a family vacation between orientation and when I started school, I read that book, and I was intrigued by, particularly in the early years, at how Greek life played such a role in the development of Miami as an organization. And so that gave me a whole new insight. Neither of my parents had been Greek, although a number of family friends had been. And I was certainly interested in fraternity and sorority life, but didn't really know a lot about it. So that got me interested in Miami history and the history of fraternities. I had no idea that I might end up being a member of an Alpha chapter, but when I did, I immediately became interested in the history. Walked uptown and bought a copy of Jack Anson's history book that was published in 1957, and read it. Learned more as an associate member. Learned more about the fraternity. I was fortunate to get to know Jack Anson when he came on the fraternity staff or the foundation staff to lead the foundation's first capital campaign, and he and I immediately hit it off as two people really interested in Phi Tau history. So he sparked that interest in me, shared lots of stories, so I've kept my eyes and ears open. I've listened to people's stories. I've asked questions. I've read old laurels and old correspondence, particularly when I was involved in the research for the history book that I wrote. That gave me a new look into many of the records kept in the archives, and so it's been just sort of the avocation that I've loved over these last years that I've been a member, to listen to stories, read the stories, and do a little deeper research to find some hidden gems that no one knew about.
And you alluded to your history book. Was it challenging writing that book, and how long did it take you to write it?
Oh, I don't remember now. It seems like the whole process was done inside of a year. I spent a lot of time in Oxford going through records, reading old laurels. I tried to make it different than Jack Anson's book, which had been published at the 50th anniversary. My book was published in 1996, about a decade before the centennial. But we were able to look into some stories that and cover some issues that had been dealt with in a different way, as well as adding 40 years of history to the book. We were able to tell stories about some individuals who were no longer living that we might have been more sensitive about had they still been around, and be respectful but be truthful about events, some of the good and bad, warts and all.
Yeah, I've definitely, taken a look at your book, specifically, to read through some of the chapters, especially my own. It's definitely a great book for anybody who hasn't read it. And one of the stories that you just shared that I really liked is that there was a Phi Tau sorority actually on Miami's campus. Do you, in your honest opinion, do you think that might have had some influence over when the Phrenicon decided to change its name?
No, I don't think so at all. I think if people have read the post from our history and archives page, they may have seen that there was a local sorority at Miami called Phi Tau that later in 1911 became Miami's chapter of Tri Delta. I think it's really just coincidental, because our name, for anyone who really knows our organization, knows our ritual and principles, which go back almost to the very beginning of our organization. They know that the letters in our fraternity tie directly to those things that are part of our ritual and principles. And so it's, the fact that two of the letters are the same as this local sorority is really just a coincidence. Although I have no idea what if those letters stood for anything in particular for the sorority. It's conceivable that there might have been some similarity, but I don't think it's any more than a coincidence, really.
I think that's a really cool coincidence. To be honest with you, I honestly thought I was blown away by that. To be honest with you, but what I really liked about that post was their original symbol, how they kind of had the phi and the T mixed together. I thought that was something that was really cool, and it would be something that we would be cool if like we somehow could get the rights or even just use it kind of like as a throwback symbol as well.
Yeah, it's that badge, that little coffin-shaped badge with the 5 tall letters combined. I think it's the only sorority badge we have in our big collection of historic badges in the Heritage Room at the headquarters. But it's just coincidental that it shares a name with us, part of a name.
Wow, I didn't even know we had it in there. I'll have to look for it when I get back to the offices. But Charlie, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a really fun interview, and good luck with the rest of your day. But once again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, and thanks for doing this and helping people to get to know some of the staff members and other folks involved with our fraternity at various levels. In this podcast format, I think it's a great way to help to tell our story, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Of course, glad to have it and glad to do it. Hopefully, we'll be able to do it for a lot of years to come.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all for tuning in today. I appreciate it, and for those who, once again, have tuned in all summer, I appreciate your support as well. It's been such a blessing to be able to do this, and I've had a lot of fun getting to talk to so many people and getting to know not only their stories, but just more about their everyday job and every day that we're trying to make Phi Tau better. And I greatly appreciate all of you. It's been such a blessing to do this, and couldn't have had a better time doing it. And for those of you who have been listening throughout the entire summer, thank you. Won't be able to thank you enough. And I hope that you all got something out of this podcast. That's my only hope, at the very least. And for us expansion guys, we're now in the swing of things. I've actually recorded this interview from Atlanta because myself and Alex Papke, we are at Georgia Tech for the first 7 weeks, helping them out. And then in the second half of fall, we'll be at Michigan, restarting the Tau chapter. So for me personally, that'll be my third single letter chapter that we got to restart. And then the other 2 recruiters, they're about to leave for Tennessee Martin next week and start up there. And then they will be heading on up to the University of Delaware for the second half of fall. So it'll be a pretty busy fall. Like I said in the last episode, we might have a special episode here or there. It'll probably be just released on our YouTube page and social media. So keep an eye out for that. It might happen when we run into certain groups of alumni, stuff like that, especially given how big the alumni bases are at Georgia Tech for Alpha Rho and at Michigan for Tau, between Atlanta and a lot of Michigan alum going to Chicago. So stay tuned, but once again, thank you all very much for tuning in. It's been a heck of a ride. It's been a lot of fun. And as always, go Phi Tau.
We are brothers now and ever, until the day we die. And when that time comes rolling round, and we bid our last goodbye, there is one thing sure and certain. Let us bow our heads in awe. We'll meet again.